and welcome everyone. Today, the 18th of January 2023. I'll never forget this day when over 700 colleagues and peers globally have registered to be part of this work. Last spring, when I spoke with David Hawley, Ollie Pecker and Kevin Simpson about the creation of this task force, we could never have dreamed and hoped for so many of you to join us in this work. I'm Cam Choham from my ECIS, and I use the pronouns she and her. The task force has been established for our work together to bring change. Growing up in Wolverhampton in the United Kingdom, against this backdrop, the picture on the right is of a protest march for equal rights in my hometown in 1981. The slogan on the left was arguably one of the most racist campaigns ever run in politics in the UK. This campaign won and Enoch Powell came to power in my constituency in Wolverhampton. I always hoped that one day I would be a small part of the change that was needed. In October, the task force had its inaugural event in Geneva. I want to thank all the facilitators and everyone that co-created over those 2 days, wholeheartedly and together. These are the 6 working groups that were established: governance, curriculum, accreditation, leadership, recruitment, and agency. Today, you will hear from each of these groups, and there'll be an opportunity to join the groups. We will record today's sessions for people who are unable to attend live, and we will also send a form for everyone to complete that cannot join the task, that would wish to join the task force. There's also a chat box for your questions. Our captions aren't working today, but we will work at the back end to get this set up before we send it out. I wanted us today to just take a moment and a breath and to read this caption from Dr. Martin Luther King. It was his day on the 16th of January, which was Monday this week. As part of this work, we all know that our lives are connected. If there are women and girls who have no access to education, they may not be my daughters or my sisters, but my life is certainly poorer as a consequence. When the task force members met on Monday, we were all overwhelmed with gratitude by the interest and the registrations for the task force meeting today. With everyone in each school making a difference, making a small change, just imagine all that can be achieved. Thank you once again for joining us today. I'd like to now hand over to my colleague and friend, Kevin Simpson.
Welcome all. My name is Kevin Simpson, founder of ALOC, or the Association of International Educators and Leaders of Color. My pronouns are he, him, his. Fact, racism and discrimination are real and alive in our international school ecosystem. So if you are here to center yourself in your organization, this task force is for you. If you come to be performative, this ain't for you. If you've harmed someone in words or actions in our ecosystem and not owned it and sought restoration, this ain't for you. If you're not committed to personal growth and change and willing to work in your context, this ain't for you. But this task force is for you if you are ready to center the humanity of all who are part of our ecosystem. You are continuing to do your own self-reflection, committed to action, speaking up against injustice, and you're ready to be part of a collective devoted to change, deep dive into what is working, what is not working, and offer recommendations. In the words of our colleague Jessica Wei Wong, let us ask the hard questions, listen to the voices on the margins, and be open to knowing a truth that might dismantle our own worldview. Let us not forget about the love that drives this work. And with that, I will now share our norms, our commitments, and launch us off into the different sessions. Our norms: being engaged, experience discomfort when it arises, being able to speak your own truth, and obviously expecting at times that there's going to be non-closure. Our big three commitments with this work is committed to attending, participating, and ensuring that we document the theme that we work with on our team and it makes progress. We commit to standing in solidarity, advocate for BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, and all identities that have been historically marginalized in our ecosystem. And finally, committing to being a learner, an agent of transformation, and an advocate of accountability. And with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle, who will launch us into our themes. We'll hear from recruitment, agency, governance, accreditation, leadership, and humanizing pedagogy.
Michelle, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, and welcome to all of you. I am the first head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at the International Baccalaureate Organization, one of the founding organizations for this task force. And my co-pilot in the recruitment subcommittee is Justin Garcia. He is a they are a primary school educator who are passionate about multilingualism and identity. And we also wanted to introduce you to the actual crew that participated in the 2022 workshop, and the contributors are here as you can see them. And they've really brought a lot of ideas to bear about recruitment and what's entailed in schools and what are some of the diversity, equity, and inclusion factors that we need to think about. So one of the one of our facilitators is also Daryl Sinclair, who's head of secondary school. Daryl, are you here? Okay, we're missing Daryl.
Sorry, I am here. I literally just got in. My apologies to everyone for my lateness. Just came from a staff meeting.
Oh, you just made it, Daryl. You just made it. So Daryl is head of secondary school and social studies teacher at Weber International School in Germany. So he's going to be my co-pilot for this particular presentation. So in terms of our radical dream for this recruitment subcommittee, we strive to assist international schools in creating equitable hiring practices and developing systems to support, retain, and promote staff from historically marginalized identities and backgrounds by ensuring a diverse representation of race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, ability, and disability amongst all staff. We also want to make sure that everyone in the community understands and values the importance of having diversity within the institution. And we also would like to make sure that there are no barriers for anyone wanting to apply for any position at schools. Daryl?
So if I come at this from a point of just to put in some extra personal experience, some of the things that we know through the panel and through the conversations we've had are some of the things which I'm sure everyone here is very much aware of with regards to the lack of diversity in application pools. So whether you are a leader and you are seeing that you're not receiving the diversity of applications that you're expecting. So you can see the key points there. I won't just simply read everything out, but one additional one to add is also our awareness of the challenges faced by these communities where they do not feel confident to apply to certain jobs because of the barriers. So we know that there's a lack of diversity. We know that there are uses but limitations to recruitment agencies, that the bias runs deep and it is expressed in a systemic way in all of the avenues present. But also we know that there's work that needs to be done building bridges, because the damage done to many of these communities mean that they're also not going to be applying, even if the application process is inclusive. So this is a proactive thing that we know. It's not simply we know this is wrong, we can fix it. It's we know something's wrong, we know things need to be built and things need to be amended. There needs to be an element of justice here as well. So this is where we are coming from as a position of what the reality is right now.
So these are the four goals that we want to cover in the recruitment committee in terms of forming modules to help support schools in their diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging and social justice efforts. The first goal being making sure that job postings are proactively accessible to applicants, and that applicants also reflect the global majority and marginalized communities. So one of the things that people talk about is, well, we don't want to purposefully discriminate. So we want to kind of tackle that head on and talk about in the recruitment committee, how do you address issues that people bring up about reverse discrimination and bias in recruitment? But one of the more important strategies is if there is a lack of diversity in the applicant pools, the school must investigate internally and why it happened and find solutions. So we want to be able to provide schools with ideas of how to do that. We want to also support job training, mentoring, apprenticeships for underrepresented minorities to provide more access to them, and recruitment processes for shortlisting and interviewing should account for potential bias as well. The second goal is that schools must institute some sort of anti-discrimination module. And as I mentioned before, that is the aim of our committee, to contribute to the overall anti-discrimination modules coming out of this particular task force. And so with regards to policies and practices, they need to be embedded into the school culture in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion and social justice. We want to challenge the norm, as I mentioned, of reverse racism, and policies and practices should be in place to support the active recruitment and retention of teaching and non-teaching staff.
Okay, so as we move into goal 3, it's important to acknowledge that when we are speaking about, as has been mentioned, the recruitment, we are speaking about the whole school community. So often parts of the community which are often invisible in many senses of the word, with regards to whether it's canteen staff, ground staff, cleaning staff, all the people which actually make the school work, which often aren't included or considered in these conversations, whether it's from a union standpoint, whether it's from a recruitment standpoint. For goal 3, compensation, benefits, and visibility must extend to non-teaching staff. When we're referring to these goals, we're referring to these approaches, and what we will speak about will take place next. We are thinking about every single member of staff employed by that school, even extending as far as contractors who work with the school. This needs to be a foundational and all-encompassing approach with regards to recruitment from the perspective of the school as an organization. As we move into goal 4, we have the point of affinity spaces. Schools must advertise affinity spaces for the different groups, the different marginalized groups which exist in the school. Now, with the specifics of this goal, there is an acknowledgement that this will look different for different size schools, but the availability of, whether within the school or the availability of spaces made available to the staff, including time to be present at these spaces, is made available. So groups can be found where you can find allies, where you can speak openly and create spaces where these conversations can happen and can be born.
Thank you for that. So what do we want to do next? We want to revisit the goals and establish some fresh perspectives from hopefully those of you who are willing to join our committee. We want to unpack and break down our goals and just kind of try to see how we can expand upon them in order to create the modules. And we want to, of course, try to create some kind of curricula to support schools in this endeavor of developing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging practices in their schools. And of course, we want to include the voices from support staff as well as different regions as well. So
I'd really like to jump in on that
yes,
a little bit further, but genuinely in this, in what we are presenting with regards to recruitment, even our group represents that, some of the problems within it. So we have to acknowledge some of the biases and the expressions of these challenges within our own group. We don't have full representation in a group which is trying to create ways of addressing, challenging these problems, destabilizing these structures. So we really want to revisit this, and we want as many people and as many diverse perspectives as possible present there. So really want to push that and get as many of your voices and the voices which aren't able to be here to be involved.
Thank you so much. And we pass it on to the next group.
And then as we unpack and break down each goal, we can get into the nitty gritty, into the details of it, because currently at this point in time, this is just a whole bunch of words, but we know that words can lead to actions and actions can lead to things taking place. So we really want people to get in touch. We've got some email addresses here, which you can contact. And hopefully this will just gain momentum and be even better and better. Thank you for listening.
Thank you,
Thank
Daryl.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Michelle and Daryl. Up next is Katrina with Agency.
And I will wait to share my screen. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. And let me begin by thanking you for attending while I am sharing my screen. So here we go. In October, when we initially met for, I knew, hold on. Okay, here it goes. Let's do that again. Don't we love technology when it works for us? And it should work. In October, when we all met, there was not just us talking about the issues of racism and discrimination in the international schools, but there was also a feeling. And I want to invite you to the feeling that we had and the passion that was in the space when we first started. So I am, again, Katrina Daniel Samasa. My pronouns are she and her, and I invite you to join the Student Agency Working Group. And let's start with this idea of the radical dream. And my email is at the bottom, but that's not important. What's important is the radical dream. Joe Laban, who is a DEI expert, and he works with ISS at this moment, which is International School Services, wrote a poem that really reflects what we are trying to do in the international school. Now, I'm not going to read the whole poem, but what I want to do is take time to read the highlighted portions of the poem. And it says, in a place where we will be who we are, unquestioned and undenied, beautiful, legal, no explanations and justifications, not silent, not silenced, existing, resisting, breathing, where we whisper, speak, and sing, and dance, and move, and create with the languages we have, the languages of our hearts and minds, of our flesh and bones, the lands and in the languages we own, in a place where we are not only accepted and tolerated, but are fully and authentically living, loved, and lived. Caring for and carving new paths, writing our songs, nourishing our souls, making our own art, dismantling the shackles of our histories and hearts. This is the feeling that we want our students to have, this feeling of being able to express themselves, as they matriculate through the school, through these ecosystems. So I want to start with motivating our DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion representatives, all of you who are in the schools working hard to end discrimination and racism. And sometimes we know it might not seem like the work is valuable or valued, but I want to give you these words of encouragement. Now, we're not going to listen to the whole thing. As you know, Monday was Dr. Martin Luther King Day in the US. And as a US born citizen and someone who has history in America, this is an important day for me. So I wanted to play this for you all.
Your life's blueprint. You must have basic principle, the determination to achieve excellence. in your various fields of endeavor. You're going to be deciding as the days and the years unfold what you will do in life, what your life's work will be. To discover what it will be, set out to do it and to do it well. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, trail. If you can't be the sun, be a sun. And even when it's sunny, that you can on your trail. Every day in your life's blueprint must be a commitment to the eternal principles of beauty, love, and justice. Well, life for none of us has been a crystal staff, but we must keep moving. We must keep going. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving.
And I kind of want to just let that resonate with all of you who are doing the work. I just want to encourage you when it gets difficult or if you feel you're not being heard to keep moving. All right, so we're not going to watch that again, I promise. So what we're going to do now is talk about the radical dream for our students and really quickly go over what we've done in agency. I do not have a picture and a slide for the 20 plus members of my committee. We have met several times, but I do know they're in the audience. I have seen you. Thank you very much to them. So the radical dream is for all of our students to feel welcome and included in our international school communities and know they are valued, but are also empowered to advocate for themselves and their peers to help promote anti-racist, anti-discriminatory school communities. So this is about not only us having agency as the adults in the building, but also allowing our students to have agency and be empowered as well. So our group, this is the radical dream. And if you're an educator, you probably have heard of backward design. So starting with the endpoint and then designing to the beginning. And so that's what we're thinking as we approach student agency and agency within our international school context, starting with the radical dream and going backward. I'm not going to read all of this, but one of the things that we did in Geneva when we were there is I gave this list of statements and people stood on a line. And if you agree, you went on one side. If you didn't agree, you went on another. So I'll just read out like 3 of them. Most of my students understand racism, bias, and discrimination. So we can't have students as agents if they don't understand these terms and what they actually mean. And then another one is, I knew it. You know, I can't go through these without having some technical difficulties, but it's okay. Another one is that we kind of looked at is we have a clear method of discussing student agency with our students. So meeting with them regularly and talking to them about student agency, okay? Another thing that we discussed and talked about is what do we need to do with our students? So training the students, creating events around them, empowering them to be ambassadors at the school, using your older students as mentors, taking the student approach to agency, building key relationships with the leadership team. And that's the students and the other adults in the buildings. And making sure, again, those students have training on peer mentoring, anti-bully behaviors, and public speaking. So as a group, these are some of the things that we talked about that were necessary to kind of put in place to give our students that agency. However, And this is not just teacher agency. So let me move back a bit. This is staff agency. So anybody on the staff, how can we make sure that we give them agency as well to be anti-racist, anti-discriminatory? So trust and train your DEI teams, empower them to make decisions, make a real commitment to being anti-racist. By having specific methods and policies to address those particular issues. And if you are a school leader and you don't understand how DEI works or how it's going to work in your international school, there are a panel of people here that will support you in that endeavor. But these are some of the issues that we found. So what are we going to do? Through our meetings, we have understood that each school is nuanced. And so what we're doing is actually talking about and discussing what each school is doing at this point. And then we're having discussions and looking at whether this can be applied universally. So that's pretty much what we're doing, is trying to make sure that we can create a universal plan that will create agency within our schools' ecosystems. So with that, I am done. I hope you're interested in joining the agency group, and I will pass it on to our next speaker.
Thanks, Katrina. I will take over. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to see you all here. As Cam mentioned, all these numbers, and I see many people from my school. I see many people from schools across the world, which just gives hope. I looked up earlier today, the words task force, if you look at the synonyms, force, strength, power, energy, task, job, duty, piece of work. And what I can tell you, and I think Kevin made that very clear, is that all of you and all of us here should be ready to put in the work. I know that everyone on the screen that you see today has the energy, so we hope that you bring the energy as well. With that, my name is Yasmin Sadri. This is my third year as a lead at the International School of Geneva in Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. And I had the honor of sitting in the months leading up to the launch with the co-founding team and really watching this process unfold. I represent the governance piece with my co-facilitator, Kathleen Nagley, and together we hope to really radically change and pour in this radical love into what really ties so much of our work together. And I want to take a moment to emphasize that ultimately we are a task force of now 6 different themes. So as you're listening to everyone, I just want you to remember that we're all interconnected. We're all working together. It's easier for us to split up and do work separately, but as you will see in the governance group, we will be working with the accreditation group, with the pedagogy group, and with all the other groups. So want to start us off with a quote, and I apologize for using this quote, but I don't apologize at the same time. Angela Davis said, "I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept." So with that, I will hand over to my co-facilitator, Kathleen, who will be sharing with you what governance really is.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Yasmin, for sharing your time with me. When we're looking at governance, this is a mystery topic for many educators around the world, because governance is often this supervisory board or some kind of board that sits above your school institution that is making a lot of decisions that filter down to the smallest details of a school. And because the supervisory board is often behind closed doors, and in some cases not even open to the public, it is a source of tremendous power in schools. And so when we're looking at this topic, we have to realize that this is very, very dependent on the context that you are in your school. So is your school a nonprofit school, or is it a profit school? And how those questions play out and their answers determines much about what happens in your school. So Yasmin, if you go to the next slide. One of the things of the problem that we're looking at is really that the structure of your school sits in the hands of your board of governors or your supervisory board, or whatever you have it, with the name that goes along with this. And because their structure has put them in the most powerful position, they often just really represent structural racism, how it's been set up, how schools have been founded and are set up are based on the same problems we have in society of systemic racism. Our schools are not somehow outside of this problem. They are a part of the problem and they perpetuate the problem. They are often vehicles of oppression. And when we look at this topic, we're wondering about how we are not just going to try and tweak this this area of school, but how do we radically think about restructuring what happens? And that has to do with the way that power is restructured. So what we're thinking about for this particular group is for those who are kind of visionary in looking at the structure of schools itself, and the power structures that are visible and invisible in your schools, and then hopefully moving forward that we can take this to one of the few places of external power around your school, and that is through accrediting agencies or for some of our schools, U.S. State Department relationships, work with the IBO who are here as well. So this is a very powerful group, and we're going to be looking for certain types of profiles of people who have a great understanding of how it works, so we can figure out how to dismantle how it works. I'll turn it over to Yasmin.
So currently in our governance team, we have different members, and these are people who were there at the task force launch. So we're looking to expand this team of already a wonderful list of people. So we have Christopher, Constance, Jenny, Kathleen, Nayang, Sarah, Shireen, Timothy, and myself. But really, how do we move from being consumers of this governance to being co-creators? We need to expand our team, and who we are looking for. This is not an exhaustive list. So who we're looking for are really systems thinkers, current or ex-board members, current or ex-teacher representatives on boards, accreditation members, leaders, heads of school. And I think perhaps most importantly, and I want to give some credit to one of our current members who said this, and I quote, "It's so easy to want to modify the structures that make up an international school, split it up into sections, collect data, analyze, discuss, and implement, but international schools have been built on white supremacy, elitism, exclusion, neoliberalism, and colonialism, just to name a few. We can't forget that our students are the ones that should be governing us. We are here to scaffold and provide them with the tools so they can dream and live their future." And I share this quote because I really want us to reflect on, and I also have this background here, look at what the youth is capable of doing. Gen Z, Gen Y, they are really telling us what they need. So it is a perfect moment for us to sit with them at the table, at their table perhaps, and make these changes that will be crucial moving forward for international school education and beyond. So your voice matters globally. You will notice that the list of people that we currently have represent Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe. We want to make sure that all around the world, and this is not just for the governance theme, this is really for everyone in everyone's theme in the task force, is that your voices are heard wherever you are in the world. So please join us as we try, hopefully, to make incredible changes to the international school ecosystem. For governance, we will have our next meeting on February 16th. Depending on the registrations we get, we will choose a time that really respects everyone, so that everyone can make it. So that's it for me. Kathleen, I will stop sharing if you want to share anything else. It's really been a pleasure working with you, and I can't wait for everyone to join.
No, it's a great, interesting group, and I really warmly invite those who are interested to come join us. Yasmin, who's next?
I'll take over. Welcome
Kevin
to
is next.
I'm next. Welcome to the A team, the team you want to be on. I know you want to be on multiple teams. I saw a question already. Can I join multiple groups? We know. The A team or accreditation group is co-facilitated with myself and Unana Naomi. I present in his absence. He presented at the first session earlier today. I want to start by giving a shout out to all of our contributors in Geneva: Christine, Nancy, Ben, Jane, Meredith, Sherry, Clara, Jeff, Christina, and Unana. Of course, we could not have did this work without you. So a special shout out to each and every one of them for their thoughts, their questions and challenges throughout the entire process. So our big four questions that our group explored. What do we know? How can we make an impact? How do we envision the future? So what's our radical dream? And what are our objectives and our steps to take to achieve them? In thinking about what we knew and coming together, and the great part was we had some folks from accreditation agencies right there sitting with us. That accreditation can be a lever for change. We all know that self-study process gives us insight, it gives us information about our community, a look into who we are and who we could be. That the process is voluntary, but there's also a framework that we are provided. But we also know, along with the things that are good, there are also some challenges at times in terms of regulations, governmental. When we think about who comes to visit, do those folks mirror the very essence of the schools in which we are in? And sometimes groupthink happens in terms of making decisions and leadership, for better or for worse. So how can we make an impact? Our four were thinking about what already exists, such as the UN Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention on the Rights, and how could that influence the work with accreditation agencies? Thinking about how do we look at diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, belonging, and infuse that within the training of the school leaders and the volunteer staff that attend these visits with schools. Paying close attention to those types of questions and the self-studies, ensuring that everyone's voice, when we say all, we mean ALL, everyone's voice is fully heard and a part of that community survey and the gathering of that information. And again, ensuring that who is a part of those teams mirrors and matches the schools in which we are in. So what are our dreams? Number one, that every single accreditation agency has clearly defined, and it's not just defined, but it's also shared. Everyone knows in terms of their stance on anti-racism and anti-discrimination when it comes to standards. Number three, again, and we just heard this with governance with Yasmin and Kathleen, that students are part of this piece. That it's not just we meet with a student groups. We should ever presently see students as a part of the entire accreditation piece. They should be given feedback on curriculum. They should be given feedback on leadership. They should be at all these different meetings and not just something that's in isolation just for students. And thinking about our overarching lens that DEIJB is built in within the framework throughout. And for us, our big three objectives going forward is that accreditation agencies will provide guidance and training for schools to make the process more inclusive. We think about building that diversity and capacity for our staff and volunteers, and again, with DEIJB at the heart of it. And that agencies strengthen their expectations, again, being intentional around the standards for local communities. We started to draft out our next steps in terms of some of the meetings and places and spaces we'll be in from later this month on into June, including things here in the US around accreditation agencies that'll be meeting in February, as well as our ongoing meetings. And again, we are looking for folks to join the A team. So if you're passionate about accreditation, you've served with different agencies in a volunteer capacity, you've led them, you've been in different places and spaces, you're currently on one. If you're committed to join us, we welcome you to the A team.
Thank you, Kevin. You powered through that. Thank you very much. And next up, we have leadership. So Fandy and Cam, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fandy Rosero, and I'm with the leadership group. I facilitate and co-facilitate with Cam. As you know, we all wearing both of us wearing the color of hope. And to us, the leadership working group is the engine. This group is a group that has both a responsibility to show that leadership that you already are displaying by joining the task force. At the same time, hold ourselves accountable for making sure that those commitments, those desires and intentions that we have for a group actually happen. And at the same time, sort of like lead the way in this huge undertaking that we are all committed to in ending anti-discrimination in our international schools. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the process, how we got where we are today. When we met in Geneva, we were very lucky to have a diverse group of people. We have heads of schools, heads of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We also have teachers. So it doesn't matter where you are leading learning from, if you are a head of school, if you are a middle leader, or you're leading learning from your classroom, you are welcome. We are looking for all of you who have a passion to see the big picture, but at the same time, see what will it take, for us to end discrimination from the leadership point of view. So with this group, when we met initially, our inquiry was about what do we know about leadership? Who do we see as leaders in our schools currently? Who has access to leadership opportunities? What kind of styles of leadership are we used to in the international school community? And we were interrogating all of this. We compiled a huge list of strategies from what we could collect in the 2 days, and we will share those strategies with the members who are here. And later on, when we went to do the work, we will share that with the wider community. But what I'm trying to say is there is a lot of what we already know, and what it takes now is how can we power that engine and drive that change. So having had that exploration, we thought that these goals and commitments are a good guideline, a good starting point for doing the work. And we have split it in three short or initial commitments, medium term, and long term. I'm going to share the initial goals and commitments so you know if joining our task force, the leadership task force, what are we looking at? This will also be revised once we get the new members. We'll have a rethink and see. So don't feel like these are already set. You are welcome, and we will begin the process and include your views and aspirations as well. So our initial goal is implicitly embed diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice into vision, mission, and values and practices. As you know, in leadership, it's very important that we align what we do with what we say we do. Another important goal is to allocate resources. So to advocate for allocating resources, and within those leadership roles as well, to commit to allocating resources to create a day role with positional power. During the task force, we saw, we had the pleasure to hear from Cynthia Robertson and John about the experiences there. And we really understood that in order to drive the change, part of it is allocating time, resources, so that this work can take place. So resources to effectively and sustainably drive day 100%. The other part is to conduct an audit to understand where the challenges are in your school, in your region, because sometimes we don't see the reality as it is. So it's very important that you have a hard look at the reality of our schools. So conducting an audit is one of the goals that we have for the initial steps. Consider collecting data on the stakeholders and through surveys, conversations, and the like. The medium-term commitment develops strategies and structures for distributed leadership to empower and support middle leaders. As Cam sometimes asks me, do we need to have an idea of what the role is? Do we need a day coordinator for this? The truth is that every single leader who is in front of students, who is responsible for students in our ecosystem, has to have these diversity, equity, and inclusion competencies. But the idea is that with this is an important focus. At the moment that we are, it is important that we allocate resources to focus diversity, equity, and inclusion in our schools. So to empower and to grow in that regard. I'm conscious of the time, so I will share all this, and when you join the task force, you will see. Our next steps are to have regular meetings every 6 weeks, and in the meantime, have asynchronous collaboration. We cannot start this work unless we look at ourselves. So we are starting with the self in the leadership committee. We are committed to continue the work to support leaders. As we said, we have collected some good practice that we were going to share with the schools and at the same time advance in our own schools to further anti-bias and anti-racism work. And we are also studying, like I mentioned, we have both the broad view of leadership in our schools and at the same time, the view of what can we do in our own schools. So for that, we're starting with a book study. The book is called, and you will know the details. And so this is the book, Becoming a Totally Inclusive School. Other of our commitments are to raise awareness of the leadership goals, to use these short-term and medium-term and long-term as action items, to create a sense of urgency about the work that needs to be done, and so that we can all start getting moving and move from committing to actually leading. Sorry. To share and provide a toolkit of resources, as I mentioned, and also to create inclusive leadership competencies and skill profiles. So this is what we want to do. And for that, I would love it if you can join us. We're looking for visionaries, for people with ideas. Doesn't matter. We want school leaders, but we also want middle leaders. We want teachers and students who can help us drive the change. And just a reminder of the mission, and this is our guiding principle, to provide an environment that allows everyone to flourish by promoting practices that eliminate racism and discrimination in all kinds of schools. So I hope you join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fandy, for that presentation. And I would just want to reiterate that for these powerhouses to summarize their work in such a short amount of time is very difficult. So please take the time to get in touch with them if you need to rewatch the session so that you can make an informed decision. With that, we'll go to the last but not least group that is facilitated usually by Angeline Au, who couldn't be here now. So Angeline has brought her whole team, not her whole team, but pieces of the whole: Elizabeth Palathra, Beth, Rama, and I believe one more that I'm missing. David is on here. So there you are, David. So over to you all.
And Fidelis, Yasmin. Fidelis joined us too.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know she was also facilitating today. And Fidelis.
It's fine.
Okay. Is someone able to share the slide deck?
Yes, sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. Just give me a moment.
Fidelis, as Elizabeth shares, would you mind introducing yourself, because you are one of the new team members that came into the humanized pedagogy, and I think people need to hear the great work that you do with IB.
Hey, actually in Geneva during the inaugural event, I worked in the leadership group, but I am director of curriculum in the IB, and taking into consideration that the IB is very much about curriculum, I opted to go into humanizing pedagogy because I think as an organization, one, we need to make the commitment as an organization and be seen to be driving that. And two, I think it was just an awesome group, Rama and your team. I wanted to join you. So yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm wondering if someone else from the team can share the slides.
I can try.
Thank you, David. All right, thank you for taking over as slide facilitator, David. My name is Elizabeth Palathra, and I am joined here today by Fidelis, Beth, David, and Rama. And we're going to talk to you all about our process and to the work that we've done regarding humanizing pedagogy. So I'd like to just, this is a picture of those of us who joined. in October in Geneva. There were 11 of us. In the back row, we had Neela, Jambi, Emmanuel, Beth, Marina, Rachel. And in the front row kneeling, we have Angeline, myself, Rama, David, and Scott. We're very conscious of the intersections that we represent. The majority of us are from schools in Western Europe, and we have one person who is from a school in an African country. And we have a representation from quite a diverse range of identities. The committee is quite reflective of the global profession, about 70% as women identifying. And we also have a range of roles in terms of job. We have primary teachers, secondary teachers, and as well middle and senior leadership present on the committee. And we are actively and consciously seeking to diversify in these areas. So looking for people who are interested coming from Asia Pacific, Eastern Europe, South and North America, Caribbean and beyond. We'd also like to have voices from those who are identify as non-binary, Indigenous people who also come from different divisions of school, so students, parents, board members, etc. If you are a teaching assistant, student support services, head of school, early childhood educator, we really welcome you to join our committee. So next we'll have Beth talk a little bit about our process.
Great, thank you. So what we're going to do is present to you kind of how we work through our first 2 days. And so on the first day, we considered the input from the morning sessions, and we were especially inspired and empowered by Kevin's comments about being a learner, an agent of transformation, and advocate of accountability. Cam and Sarah spoke about how we can use our collective expertise for impact. And then Dr. Rice from the IB spoke about how to infuse diversity, equity, inclusion into the curricula and how to support students with learning barriers, particularly around assessment. And then from there, we developed a shared understanding of curriculum and then explored that very question. And David and Elizabeth will tell you more about that process.
Hello, I'm David Garcia. My pronouns are he, his, and I'm here. I'm going to start talking as Beth was saying, what we did the first day. So the first thing we did was defining or brainstorming as a group what curriculum means to us. We had different ideas of written curriculum, unwritten, teaching and learning, designing curriculum. After this exercise, we generated our own individual ideas. And once they were generated, we tried to sorted them out through different categories and really thinking intentionally how we were gonna organize those categories. So Elizabeth is gonna tell you more about how this organization led to our first model.
So to start, we actually were considered the curriculum working group, and we realized that that was not the right term to use. And so at the heart of this committee is humanizing the pedagogy through learning and teaching. And so we wanted that to be represented in our visual, as you can see here. And we thought deeply and reflected deeply on how we can infuse diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging into learning and teaching through the principles of valuing inclusion, child protection, safeguarding, belonging, social justice, equity, and valuing. And from there are 4 parts to that that we divided humanizing pedagogy, which is culture, impact, practice, and ways of knowing, doing, and understanding. And we'll talk a little bit more about each of those sections.
And hi, my name is Rama, and I am one of ALOC's cultural wealth and lifelong learning practitioners. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the second day. On the second day of the Geneva conference, we saw 2 keynotes. The first one was by 2 alumni, Swai David and Clara Reynolds, who are the founders of the organization to decolonize international schools. And we considered the learning from day 1, but the learning from day 2 also brought a different perspective. So we decided to revisit and kind of strengthen our model of humanized pedagogy. Swai and Clara were incredibly skilled in expressing to us educators what was missing in their education, and they wanted for their education to look different. So we came back together and kind of try to define decolonization together and reflected on a few questions. We also saw a keynote by Cynthia Robertson and John Ray. Cynthia Robinson and John Ray work at the Mulgrave School, and they've shared with us the reason why their diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice and belonging approaches and endeavor have worked. And they presented to us the way they worked together. And that also kind of inspired us to come together and get into sub-working group and try to figure out commitment writing. Next slide, please. So once we came together, we reflected on the model, as I mentioned earlier, and we realized that there were a few things that were missing that we added to it. Then we revisited it and we tried to generate and sort and elaborate on day one. The subgroup kind of came together and created commitments that schools could commit to for the humanized pedagogy model to come to life. Next slide, please. Oh, the slide before, sorry. Thank you. And this is the revised model that we came about after our day two. And as you can see, it looks a little bit different from the first one that we shared, but humanized pedagogy stayed at the forefront, at the core of what we wanted. And then we added the learning and teaching and identity-centered learning and teaching. We thought that was something that was also important. My two colleagues are going to talk to you more about what we said about practice, impact, cultures, and ways of knowing. David?
Yes, thank you. So for culture, we try to define what we mean and what aspects must be included and be looked after. So we discuss things like students, or we include things as students must have agency, must be student-centered, there must be an intercultural understanding, develop a shared vision of DEIJB, building community to construct knowledge, including all voices. And in order to have a positive DEIJB culture, schools need to commit to leadership, and boards must be well-trained. They must build a culture of coaching and learning to model DEIJB, have a living student toolkit to be used in the classrooms and in the bigger picture of the school, make DEIJB explicit, visible in the school horizontally, but also vertically. And another of the main aspects that was related to culture was that we identified was ways of knowing, doing, and understanding. And we believe that it's important to interrogate white supremacy and the traditional curriculum. We must include diverse ways of knowing. We must value mental and physical interpersonal growth and personal and social and emotional learning. In order to decolonize the learning and teaching, schools need to commit to create inventories of ways of knowing where there is a variety on book choices, resources, doing and understanding to ensure that the curriculum is significant, challenging, engaging, and relevant to every single learner. They must work on their assessment, language practices, community engagement, and collective accountability, including all stakeholders, teachers, coordinators, parents. And Beth is going to continue with practice.
Thank you. So with practice, we divided into two sections, instruction and assessment. And the themes that we identified as most important were, of course, keeping students at the center. So being student-centered, the inclusion of learning diversity, co-constructing knowledge by including all perspectives and creating safe environments, teaching students to interrogate and be transparent about choices, and intercultural understanding. And as far as our commitments, we are asking for schools to commit to supporting safety from identity-based harm and a sense of belonging for all students, to co-construct knowledge and skill building by including multiple perspectives, engage and reflect diverse ways of knowing, doing, understanding, and serving as laboratories for intercultural understanding. And I think actually I'm repeating some of the other ones, so I apologize. I will stop there and hand it over to the next for impact.
So we broke down impact into local and global impact, and as well impact on the individual, interpersonal, and institutional level. And we broke this down further by looking at some themes and common things that came up was accountability, student voices, and the continuous education and exploration of human history on a global scale behind the content being studied. And we came up with some commitments that would on the individual level, which is to actively participate in learning and teaching that focus on identity-centered learning and model an equitable, anti-discriminatory, and anti-bias mindset. And the institutional commitment is to give the learning community the framework to implement a humanized pedagogy through learning and teaching. And when looking at the local and global impact, the commitment to interrogate the history behind the content and ensure continuous education from multiple lenses and perspectives, and to actively challenge inequitable, discriminatory, and biased interactions within the local and global communities. So David's going to talk a little bit about the next steps for our committee.
So the next steps, our committee, we hope that you have already realized that this is the committee you need to join, because we are an awesome group that we are thinking and having great conversations. So we want to expand the committee to include voices that are not currently present. So that can be any of you. And then together with all of you, we will move to a stage 2, where we will revisit the goals and form sub-working groups that will have different duties, like consolidating the concept of humanizing pedagogy, but also we will divide the work to do some research in the different strands to inform and write commitments. Then the stage 3 will be form 2 new groups to bring together the research and our what we have found out and develop a profile of DEIJV driven educator. And Rama is gonna explain further how we call for action.
So if, like us, you feel that our education system needs to change, it needs to be different, it needs to be more humane, if diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging is something that you are truly passionate about, we'd love to have you. We're looking for educators, for teachers, for students, for non-teaching staff, because as the recruitment group mentioned, the non-teaching staff also matters. They're at the core of everything that we do, and they're part of our community, and the children see everything that happens with them. So please join us. If you're an alumni, we need your thoughts too. We hope, please take a photo of the QR code. We know some of the material will be sent out to you, but the Humanized Pedagogy is the group to join. Thank you.
Thank you to the team for wonderful presentations today. As we close out, I want to remind everyone that you will be receiving the recording in the next 48 hours, as well as a registration form to choose which theme you want to go to, and I believe you will get the chance to have a first choice, second choice, etc., etc. So to close this out, I want to, and thank you, Katrina, for already using crucial time in your presentation to honor this. I still have my copy from the task force launch, so I'm going to close this out with Joel Yaban's words, our dear colleague. And I want us to imagine where we're going, which world we're going to with this task force. So I want to read only the last piece of this, because of time also, but the last piece of this beautiful poem. We are healed of our wounds, from the terrors and horrors of that gaze and hateful rage. We are fortresses of courage. No spear, no fear, no chains, no pain, no borders, no orders, no quiet and blasting war. We will live and love our truth. We are who we are. Thank you all for tuning in today. Much love, radical love. Let's do it. Thank you all.
since we've all gone silent, I'm just going to say thanks ever so much to everybody. Cam had to jump off the call, but brilliant, absolutely fabulous to have got those introductions, and we'll see how people sign up from it. There were over 100 people again here today, but over 300 had registered. So, and there are more people asking, you know, do we have to have been here today to be able to sign up? So it's absolutely brilliant. I think there are some more questions in the question and answers, but oh no, because if people are using that as the chat now, there's some thank yous in the questions. So yeah, absolutely wonderful.